Hello and welcome in this new broadcast of our podcast, Time to Talk. And I'm very happy that today my guest is Khalil Sima'an. He is a professor of computational linguistics at the University of Amsterdam. And besides that, he is also a poet. And he's Palestinian and very knowledgeable about many questions regarding Palestine. So I'm very happy, Khalil, that you want to join this broadcast. First of all,
Thank you for the invitation, Jakob.
First of all, we are now almost or more than 300 days into the slaughter of Gaza. It is terrible to watch, even as an outsider. But how does it feel for you as someone who has the roots from the region?
Well, you already characterized it. It is terrible. That's the start. But I think what is what has become most troubling over the past months is the realization that my understanding of Europe and the USA turned out to be completely wrong. I came to the conclusion that I've built for 35 years, built my life here in the Netherlands on the assumption that I am safe here, that I can live here as somebody who escaped the ruthless dictatorship. When I call it dictatorship, it's an ethnocracy in Israel. But I came here, and actually what I'm finding is that the whole talk of the assumed freedom to speak is being threatened at this moment, but also the disregard of what has been on the main pages of the Dutch society, and that is human rights. I'm actually puzzled. I'm in a period now that I realize that I've been misled. I thought our societies were lagging behind in that regard. At this moment in time, for the first time in my life, and I'm turning 60 soon, I realized that has not been true, and I was misguided. I fell into the trap of the colonialist trap.
Yes, that is that's a very strong expression of what you feel like. Just to go back a bit, I mean, you are one of the millions of Palestinians living outside of Palestine. Can you tell us, for the audience, like how your journey to live in Europe was? Like, what does your family come from, and what was the reason that you end up in the Netherlands?
Yes, yeah. So that's a long story, but I'll try to tell the kind of a summary. I was born in Haifa. Haifa, this is inside Israel, what is now Israel, to a family that came from the Galilee originally. Both my mother and father come from two villages in the Galilee. My father's village is called Sohmata, and my mother's village is called Kafir Biram. Both villages were uprooted in 1948, and the families were driven out of the villages. There is a whole story behind this. Part of the family ended up in the Lebanese refugee camps, so the Palestinian camps in Lebanon. The other part succeeded to sneak in, like many Palestinian, back into Palestine and to live for many years illegal, but also under military rule until 1966. So my family had 20 years, first 20 years of the State of Israel, very similar to what is the situation now in the West Bank.
So again, a story of being uprooted and being chased from your own native country.
How I ended up here,
Yeah.
that's another story, which has to do with the fact that the situation, obviously, for a young person in the country back in the 80s and in the 1980s was a mix of, particularly after 1982, when the Lebanon was attacked by Israel, the PLO in Lebanon,
Yes.
and the devastation in Lebanon. For an 18 years old, 19 years old, this was a traumatic experience, and I was at the time of that age. Then came the Intifada in 1987, first Intifada, and it was hopeless. I grew up with clear statements from Israeli politicians about us being the fifth column inside Israel. I'm talking about the Palestinians inside Israel, us being the enemy at school, in the university. We were the enemy. Growing up with a feeling of the enemy is, I can tell you, far worse than being a foreigner, a migrant in a new country. Even if it is you lose your own country in this way, at that age at least, it gives hope that you might be able to develop your career and also live with people around you on equal footing.
So what did it mean practically to be regarded as the enemy? How did it show up in your life?
Well, let me start first by articulating how it was. I'm thinking, what age do I start telling this? At what age should I start? So I think maybe the best is around 16 and upwards, because before that, I was at the protection of my parents. The protection was quite limited because we had a couple of times that the police came at home because of my parents participating in demonstrations. But in any case, starting at that age, talking about 16 and what came afterwards, I can mention, for example, registering for the university. The statistics at that time do not lie. The large majority of Palestinian young people had to leave the country to study at university. The percentage of Palestinians inside Israel was approximately 21%. It's still 21%. But the percentage of the universities, especially the technical university where I was studying computer science, the percentage was less than 5% out of a population that is 21%. Whatever you can think up about lagging behind, and this was not the case, because those who were not accepted ended up in Europe studying and finishing degrees in various universities in Germany, in Italy, and many places, also in the Soviet Union at the time.
Yeah.
And so first, it was the clear feeling that there was a kind of obstruction to enter the universities, to start the studies. And second, when I was at the university, we as Arab students, our Palestinian students, were forbidden, for example, on campus to have Arabic music. We were forbidden. So all kind of expressions by the university itself, by the Senate of the university, that forbid us all kind of things that were okay for all others. And on top of that, at the time, there was the movement that is now in the government of Israel, which was it was called Kach movement, which was a movement by Meir Kahane. They attacked the students in the dormitories. They attacked our former teachers at high school, ended up in the hospital. one of them was basically in physical problems for the rest of his life because of this. So this was the atmosphere, kind of just sketching it at but on the streets, wherever you went, having the fact that you had to deal with, I'm talking about now a situation where I face in the Netherlands, but it's different, and I'll tell why. Having to speak Hebrew when all expressions in Hebrew were actually targeted against us. It was the language of the oppressor. At schools, we had Hebrew Zionist poets, whereas we were forbidden to read books by Palestinian poets like Mahmoud Darwish. It was forbidden at school. We read it outside on our own, if we could find these books. So we knew very clearly, I mean, the rules were outspoken in that regard. It's not talking about my parents, what they suffered from was much harsher because it's more similar to the West Bank with checkpoints, with permissions to be able to visit the next village in your own country or not visit it in many cases, to have a job in Haifa or not to have a job in Haifa, which was the city at the time in the north, close to Galilee. Yeah, that's a kind of a little summary of.
So what would you say to the many, people who are actually quite ignorant about the situation, who say, Israel is a multicultural society, and look, this Muslim is wearing his own outfit, going to the mosque, and he's also praying. There's religious freedom and there's equality of rights. So, I mean, who talk about this sort of so-called image of the democratic state of Israel? How would you respond to that?
Well, clearly, from what I was telling now, the expressions of being myself, a non-Jewish living in the country. I don't want to say now Palestinian, Muslim, or Christians because that's beside the point, in my opinion. It's simply being non-Jewish in a state that has been declared only for the Jews, and the rules have been set for me as non-Jew to behave according to a set of rules that they've carved out and prepared for me. You can imagine how that feels like. At the same time, the right to vote, for example, in the elections, which is given to the Palestinians inside Israel, is completely nullified by the declaration of the state being Jewish, even before 2018, which was in the Knesset. It was stated, but it was already declared that way, outspoken by many. And knowing at the same time, I'm thinking there are too many things in my head because there are so many. So such a state, clearly not for non-Jews, and at the same time having many laws that strip me out of my land, basically villages which I visited because I had relatives there in Galilee, the villages that were accidentally remained after 1948. Those villages were strips of their land. So in 1976, you had the Lands Day, where there were demonstrations because of the effort to steal, I call it steal, the state for Israel tried to grab land from the people in Galilee, and they succeeded. They took the land from the villages. On these lands, they built around every village. There is a set of new settlements that are actually in Galilee, that are actually surrounding these villages, preventing them from growing. So when you call it a democracy, and there are hundreds of laws that all among them, I just mentioned the law of owning land, but also the law of, for example, owning your own land, for which you have the papers from the Ottoman Empire, in the English mandate, you cannot have your land back. Whereas, for example, my parents, both sides, whereas somebody from Argentina can come in, they will receive land, my land basically, they will be allowed to live on it. And this is simply because I'm non-Jewish. It's not because I'm Palestinian, I'm simply non-Jewish. It doesn't matter, Palestinian, Christian, Muslim, whatever. What matters is that I'm non-Jewish.
Yes.
And then you have laws, for example, that prevent non-Jews, particularly Palestinians, those are more clear, to come and live in certain municipalities that have been declared as Jews only. Literally laws, in rules in the municipalities. Then you have laws about intermarriage with the West Bank. Families that are not allowed to come together because they are one spouse is from the West Bank, the other is from inside Israel, and they're not allowed to unite. They cannot meet inside Israel. So, and there are many of those rules. So, if the best description is that there is a layer of democracy on top, and under it a whole big pudding of ethnocracy.
Oppression.
That's how it is.
Hey, you came to the Netherlands already a long time ago, and you say you just started by saying, I was misguided about the West and about the Netherlands and about the regards to values and human rights, etc. When you came to the Netherlands, did you have a different feeling than now? Has the Netherlands changed, or was it at the core always the same, according to you?
If I talk about what I felt at the time or my analysis after the fact, my analysis nowadays, if I talk about what I felt as a 22-year-old when I came here to the Netherlands, I felt this is a society that is aspires for freedom. This is a society that talks about human rights. This is a society where I have opportunities, and I felt that if I work hard and I use my talents in the way that I could use them best, I will be able to reach very as much as I like, so to speak. Especially at the university, I did not feel that outside the university my chances were similar, especially in companies with a name like Khalil. It was not in companies. It was a different story. But universities are kind of seemed like bastions at the time, bastions of freedom, bastions of equality, of talent. Merit is the measure of where you end. And at the same time, it was the time where South Africa was in the, I came 1989. 1989 was just before South Africa became very turbulent, more than before, in just preparing for the big change in 1994. And at that time, I saw there was a movement here, albeit not the government, but there was a strong movement support of the ANC, the support of the
against apartheid.
Yeah, against apartheid. So it felt like, oh, great! There is here a society which is, which has a heart. The society that wants to help with the freedom and against the oppression of the people in South Africa at the time. So I felt actually that there is, on the one hand, for me personally, a lot of possibility, especially at the university. And I was right about it. The universities were and are largely still, if you avoid the question of Israel and boycotting Israel, if you avoid that, the universities in the Netherlands are based on merit. And that's a very good thing. It's a major and important aspect. Obviously, there are discussions about equality between men and women, which were, where you can actually find ways to break the what already exists for many generations. So,
but doesn't the very fact that you say, apart from the question of boycotting Israel or the Palestinian justice, etc., doesn't that sort of deny or make invalid the whole other? I mean, if you can't hold a principle as a universal principle that should also count for Palestinians, then what's the value of I mean, of the other, like of the genuine intention of the other values? I mean, I find that always extremely striking that even so-called very liberal institutions can say anything about climate, about against racism, again for pro-LGBT rights, but okay, Israel is coming into the picture. Palestinian rights, no, that's a red line. We don't cross that one. I'm very amazed that it can happen. But do you think
that's
that has
exactly, yeah.
But has that part changed over time? How do you feel the climate now at Dutch universities towards this issue?
It's not good. The Dutch universities, and I'm talking, if we look at what they published, I think it was Trouw. They had an article just before this, at the end of just before the beginning of the summer break, or just beginning of the summer break, indeed. There was an article by the boards of the university, the College van Bestuur, so the boards of the universities in the Netherlands, 14 of them, all of them had written an article about that they will never consider boycotting Israel. So when you state that you will never consider boycotting Israel, that's a very blunt and very big statement, making Israel a very special case, because there are no other case, as far as I know, where they would have said we will never boycott the U.S. or will never boycott Germany or Egypt or whatever. Plus, the language that has been used, in my opinion, has revealed something that I've never imagined still existed. And that thing is, I will name it before I say the kind of language, and that thing I will name the latent colonial mindset that still dominates at these universities. Now,
can you give an example? Can you give a concrete example of that? Yeah.
So the language that they use is, they call, and I was to the opening of the University of Amsterdam, the academic year at the University of Amsterdam last Monday. And it was repeated many times. The only term that is used for what's happening in Gaza and in the West Bank at this moment is the conflict in the Middle East. So first, it's a conflict, so there are parties that are equal. And second is the whole Middle East. And yes, of course, Israel has problems with other parties in the Middle East at the moment as a result of what's happening in Gaza and in the West Bank. But they blow it up such that it becomes very blurred, no focus. It's a conflict. Parties are equivalent. So one party is in terms of power similar to the other party, in terms of rights in the same similar to the other party. And I mean actually the complete disregard for what happened this year in 2024 by the international courts, particularly the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court, particularly the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, that had 3 very important statements about the plausibility of what's happening in Gaza being a genocide. And plausibility is enough because we all said we don't want to wait until it is really a genocide. And by now, we don't know for sure whether it is only a plausibility or really. So I personally think it's already, but we stay with what the ICJ said. The second thing in their more recent ruling, they said that the Israeli occupation of the whole Palestinian territory, both Gaza and the West Bank, is illegal, and illegal in its root. So not only the building of settlements and activity, but the whole existence of Israeli army on that land is illegal. And the third thing, which is very important, and that is the racial segregation, which they call racial segregation, and actually amounts to apartheid. So they named three things: the plausibility of genocide, the plausibility of, not plausibility, but the apartheid racial segregation that Israel, the system of racial segregation that Israel has built, and the illegality of the occupation. What else do you need more? What else, what case is there in the world where you have all three happening and still in a universities in the Netherlands disregarded completely? They don't talk about it. Never, nowhere they've named the genocide. Nowhere they named the apartheid. Nowhere they named the ICJ. It is completely disregarded. And this is actually a hint at something that is quite frightening. I never imagined I will reach that point of being frightened of my own university.
And can you make that more explicit? A hint at what exactly?
So it hints at the fact that we, as the Dutch universities, will not act to protect anyone. On the contrary, we will continue to support the oppressor in this case, whether it is with collaboration, whether it is with money, whether it's with opening our institutes for institutional collaboration with Israeli universities. And by doing that, for me as a worker of the University of Amsterdam, I feel they are infringing on my trust in the system that I thought we all have had, where we champion equality and champion the human rights worldwide. So the case of Ukraine has been explained as, no, but that was the government, that was not us, suggesting that they would have never done anything against the Russian invasion.
Yeah.
Okay, so this means you would have been continuing collaboration with a Russian invader? No answer. If you ask that, you don't get an answer.
There's no real logic in it.
We will never know. Sorry?
There's no real logic in their reasoning. It's just a made-up argument, of course.
Yes, so it is.
But yeah, it raises the question. What I'm always surprised with, and I was never really hopeful, but I thought, the level of atrocities that we see every day, besides that, the complete bluntness by which the Israeli officials admit and even brag about their committing atrocities and genocide, even the countless videos of soldiers bragging about doing the most horrific things, blowing up neighborhoods, killing children, the accounts of so many doctors, the killing of even, as racist as it may sound, of Western aid workers, because that's, of course, nothing really even made a dent into the Western position. And it's of course, the university are just an expression of those crucial institutions of the West. But I'm even though I wasn't very hopeful, I'm still surprised by the monolithic choice to support a genocidal regime. Maybe I'm super naive, but how come this apparent lobby is so strong? So the death of countless children doesn't even register, it seems.
You named it. So basically, I was going towards that. All the cases that you mentioned, the examples of what's happening on the ground, also with aid workers, but also with the peoples themselves, with children, with
hospitals, schools, etc.
The reports, the articles, even in medical journals like the Lancet, quoting approximately 200,000. That's beginning of the summer, but by this moment it will be far more than the 200,000 casualties. So all those are actually cited in the ICJ rulings, but also as as a risk of why this is plausibly a genocide. All the intent of the Israeli politicians, but also those who are doing the work. The lobby that you mentioned here in the Netherlands is not an Israel lobby. And I say that is not an Israel lobby. It is a lobby that works for itself. And this lobby has an agenda. In the US, this lobby has become much clearer thanks to work by John Mearsheimer, who wrote a book about this some time ago. And that is the lobby that is the Zionist lobby. The Zionist lobby is a lobby that is Christian in its heart. And the power of that lobby is the Christian part. It's not in the Jewish part. The Jewish part that participates in it is a small part that is indeed an Israel lobby. But the bigger umbrella around the Israel lobby is the Zionist lobby that believes in the biblical thoughts about the second coming. And then I think this has been known by now, the fact that there are people who believe that Israel has to be there such that the Jews will treat the world into a third world war, or call it Armageddon. And so half the Jews will perish and the other half will turn into Christians.
What makes you say, you suggest that this is a stronger part of the lobby than the Israel part?
Yes. And it's an old one. It's not a new one. So when I say it's stronger than the Israel lobby, what I'm saying is actually that it is not against the Israel lobby. They work together. It's one and the same. But it's not only about Israel. That's what I want to say. They have their own beliefs. They have their own agenda. And this lobby coincides also with the fact that there were already in Europe, after the Second World War, all kind of agendas that started before the Second World War. So after the Second World War, things that were already prepared before even before the First World War, and I'm talking about the idea of sending the Jews away. This was an idea that is not only for the Nazis. It was a European idea that lived in many places, including in the UK, England, which led to the Balfour Declaration in 1917. Balfour himself, which was the foreign minister, was an outspoken anti-Semite. And his reason for planting the idea of a Jewish homeland, as he called it, in Palestine, was based on the idea that we can now get rid of the Jews, but at the same time use them in a good way in that region to control the region, the Suez Canal, the oil that was discovered at the time by American companies, and so on. And after the Second World War, the West, basically Europe and the US, capitalized on this idea with the birth of Israel. And soon, Israel moved from the support of the UK, Britain, the British who supported Israel at the time, they switched to the support of the Americans when they discovered that the Americans are a stronger ally. And the Americans had already a huge lobby inside the US that is based. So when I say the Zionist lobby, I'm referring to for example, Christians for Israel, they call themselves, but actually they are Christians for Christians, Christians for the Christianity that they see based on the second coming. That is not the Christianity we all maybe think about and agree on together.
But in the process, they are killing also the Palestinian Christians, and that is so amazing to me or awful to see. And how do you think about those Christian parties like Christian Union, CDA, SGP, who are hardline behind Israel and are actually supporting the extermination of Christians from Israel?
So Palestine. Yeah, exactly. So the question is then, why are they doing that?
Yes.
And as far as I could tell, the Holocaust is a fig leaf for something else. It's the Bible, and the Bible doesn't say what they believe it says, according to me as another Christian, but they believe it says something that I just mentioned, and they actually. So, if you really believe that another people is the chosen people, the Jews are the chosen people, why are you then not a Jew?
It, it's
If,
it's
if
very
God chose
strange.
them, why
It's
are you
very
not a Jew?
strange. It's very
Yeah.
strange.
So I don't believe they believe that the Jews are the chosen people. They just say it. If you believe that the Jews has the right for such a land, um, because God promised it to them, so you got nothing. God promised you nothing, but were you actually uh, screwed by, having empty hands at the end,
Mhm.
having worshipped the Son of God? How does it work? I
It's
completely don't understand
but
it. So,
for my, like, I wonder whether this is sort of something like a conscious construct by someone who has a clever plan, or just some incredible stupidity that has gotten root into a religion that is just irrational and is hard to remove because it's part of the core irrational beliefs. How do you look at that?
I mean, the um, Christian Zionism predates the Jewish Zionism. So the Jewish Zionism that started basically by Herzl, 1897 or thereabout, was predated by ideas of Christian Zionism that thought about putting the Jews somewhere in a homeland, particularly Palestine. And this predated the Jewish, because the Jews do the I would say the real Jews do not think they should go back to Jerusalem or Palestine until God allows that, until the Messiah comes. So, and they say it, and that's why they are against the Zionist ideas in the state of Israel. So, the Christian the idea of Zionism was adopted um, by the non-believers among the Jews. So basically, the secular Jews, like Herzl, about a nation state that is modeled like Bismarck's Germany, kind of how Bismarck built Germany, and the idea of a nation state in Europe. So all this came at a certain point, and it's actually, as you say, the people do not think about the the little details which are actually contradictory to their beliefs, like we just discussed. But it is certainly planned from bigger players. And it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but actually there is evidence for it in the historical books. So books of history. Rashid al-Khalidi mentions how the Christianity, Zionism, Christian Zionism predates the Herzl's ideas, how and other writers have written about it with evidence, with books that have been written far before Herzl's. So, in fact, if you look at around the Second World War, in the start of Israel, the president of the U.S., Truman, at the time, and in the British government, they called themselves Zionists. It's on record. It's actually, there are videos of that showing them giving speeches to the Spanish Zionist organization, and like Biden nowadays, who said my father told me that um, I don't need to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
But
So they were
what I
already
wonder,
a Zionist. Sorry.
yeah, what I wonder always in these kind of discussions is like who owns the direction of Zionism? Is it fixed forever, or are there people who are capable of changing the direction?
Yeah. So this is a very good point, and it's good that you mention it, because in Zionism there are various streams, various strands. Among them, the strand that we see in the government nowadays, the expansionist strand that is thinking about at the end occupying the whole Middle East. So let me put it this way, summarize it now. But there are other strands who wanted a homeland for the Jews in Palestine. And whatever strand it is in Zionism, the idea of having a nation state that is called the nation state of the Jews, by definition, first of all, excludes others, but it includes all Jews all over the world, disregarding whether these people want to be in that Israel or not,
That's
or they
obvious.
want to be associated with Israel or not. Israel is the state of the Jews, but many Jews, they want nothing to do with Israel. So this is another contradiction. So how could it be the state of the Jews when it can't be the state of those Jews who don't want to be in that state? It's a complex
So there are
thing.
many contradictions in the whole story.
So the whole idea is a very weird one.
But then still, I'm astonished by the monolithic choice by all Western media, all Western institutions, all governments that there isn't. There's Spain and there's Norway and Ireland. You can step out a bit out of the line, but it's still so strong. I'm still amazed by that.
I can't understand it. To me, it's apart from at this high level saying there is this Zionist lobby. I actually do not know why my colleagues in the College of Bestuur, in the board of the University of Amsterdam, for example, why would they not dare say their mind? And I'd assume they know what's happening. It would be.
Is this related to what you say that in the beginning you mentioned freedom of speech? Is that related to what you wanted to say about this?
Yeah. So what I think is that there is so I mean, I'm trying to analyze because I cannot know exactly what it is for sure. My analysis is this: it's either fearing working against the Dutch interests and doing something that would harm our interests. I call it now the Dutch interests, which suggests that human rights are below the Dutch interests, or it is actually fear for personally being involved in and being called maybe anti-Semites, for example, or being attacked by the government because this government nowadays in the Netherlands will not be open for universities that speak their mind. So I'm trying to analyze. I really don't know. My third option, which is the ugliest, actually, my biggest fear, is that we are not cured from the colonial mindset. And I started with saying that to actually start the thinking. But the analysis is much more difficult than that. It is one option, and it is the ugliest option.
Thanks. I know you're very limited in your time. You're very busy. I just wanted to ask one more question. I know, looking at the current situation, it is quite hopeless, especially now the operations have expanded deep into the West Bank and very violently into the West Bank, and while the slaughter in Gaza is still going on. Still, like, if there's any hope, where is it? Can you? What do you think, for instance, I mean, for me, the students have been a big inspiration, even though, you can say something about their methods of work or whatever. I don't care. The students have been showing their true moral courage by not being afraid of backlash, and not only students, also staff, universities, basically. Can you say a little bit about what do you think is the future, or what do you hope, or where's your hope for the future of the region?
So yeah, so I think you mentioned the students. They are the actually the conscience of our society. Literally, at this moment, they are the conscience of our society, and I'm indebted to them for being at the forefront. So the future of the region, the situation. So I actually have two parts. One is fears, which I will mention. The other is actually hope. So my biggest fears is what's happening in the West Bank, because people think it's a continuation, simple continuation, what was happening already, but it actually accelerated. It is a continuation, but it's accelerated very much to the point where now there is evidence that the Israeli army is trying to make the West Bank villages and towns unlivable in ways that are similar to Gaza. Not as bad yet, but my fear is that this is going to continue. My other fear, which has been substantiated by what Israeli ministers said over years, 50 years, and that is that for the Palestinians inside Israel, their turn will come as well. So the Palestinians in what is called the Triangle area, just north, around the West Bank border, those are people that are likely also to be on the list of evictions, similarly to the Bedouins. And then it goes to the Galilee, which is still in large, full with Palestinian villages. The Galilee was designated for the Palestinian state in 1947, November 29th of November 1947. It was designated for the Palestinian state. And it still has many Palestinian villages. My fear is that this will be the next. The current expansionist government is the acceleration of all other governments that were before. And actually, with this acceleration, the risk has grew that they will arrive in our lifetime to executing these plans. On the other hand, there is hope. And the hope is, so let me put, before I jump to the hope, let me put a marker in the middle and say, there is the risk, in summary, is that we end up like the original people of the Americas. We end up out of our country, killed or put in reservations. So the hope is the fact that for the first time, 2024, for the first time in these 76 of what Israel has done, we have international Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, the Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch, and a whole number of human rights organizations that have designated Israel as an apartheid. For the first time, it's 2-3 years ago that they did that, but the ICJ agreed with it only now in 2024. The occupation has been ruled as illegal for the first time. We knew this according to international law, but nonetheless, you want the biggest body in the United Nations to speak that out. And it happened. Similarly, with the plausibility of the genocide, it's accumulating. Israel is, for the first time, not the Israel that Europeans love to see. It's a different Israel. And it's an ugly Israel, this government also, particularly. But it's an ugly one. And it's so ugly, I'm hoping that people start to think, I don't want to be associated with it. So that's my hope. And I want that to lead to a situation similar to South Africa, where we live together in one free state where we all are equals, where my I could say Jewish siblings in that country and far relatives, we are, we can live in the same place on equal footing, with all of us having the same rights. And a state which is, I wouldn't want it to be called neither Jewish, nor Arabic, nor Christian, nor Muslim, nor I want it to be the state of its own people. That's all. That's what I want.
Thank you very much. It was really inspiring to hear you talk and the depth of your analysis and the personal experience. So thank you very much for sharing this, and I hope we can. There's lots of more questions I would have liked to ask, but we're limited in time. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best in your work and speaking also out for the rights of the Palestinians. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity, and see you some other time.
Thanks.
Bye.